So a few words about me and Javi and Elena. As I told you, we are all EURAXESS people. And we are all in different countries. Javi comes from Spain, and he's national coordinator of EURAXESS. Elena is from Romania, and she is the national coordinator in there and takes care of her network. Myself is from Bulgaria, and I take care of our network. And also all of us, the three of us, participate in developing the new services and new tools for researchers all over Europe, although we are not directly related to that much serving researchers personally, but we are involved in all that is related to your career. So thank you very much again for coming. And now, only with few words, what we will have today is a bit more in detail about the tools and online information that we provide through EURAXESS. We will show you how EURAXESS could help you, and then we will introduce you on how to get best out of EURAXESS mentoring programs, Rebecca and Shape the Future of a Researcher, and you will receive some tips and practical advice from us on this. So Javi, thank you again. The turn comes to you. So please start and I will move the slides.
Yes, if you want to, please go to the first Mentimeter page, because as an icebreaker, as Svetlana already mentioned, we are going to be posing some questions to you. I mean, we want to have a bit of interaction because we are going to be sharing information about current resources that we have connected to the EURAXESS initiative, particularly in the EURAXESS portal, which are, let's say, career development resources aiming at facilitating intersectoral mobility. But as I will tell you a little bit in a couple of minutes, this is an area where we have a lot of work that we can still do. So for us, it's also, apart from sharing with you these resources, and hopefully you will find some interesting things which will be useful for you, we are going to be asking you a lot too, because based on your feedback, then we can also aim at reinforcing our own material and our own resources. So if you share the slide of the Mentimeter, the first one, we are going to be using for those questions.
Yeah, sure, but please do send the code that they have to enter into the Mentimeter.
Yes,
in the chat.
I will do that, but if you put also the slide, in case you want to, you have the possibility. I was doing like this. If you noticed it when Svetlana was already mentioning that we will be asking for input, you can use the Mentimeter with your mobile phone, and you can access exactly the presentation that we are using there and the polls that we have there directly with the QR code. But in any case, you can see now in the chat, you can go to menti.com and you will be asked for a 6-digit code, which you have already in the chat.
It is 8-digit code.
It's 8-digit code, you're right, 4 and 4. And if you go to one slide back, in case anybody wants to use his or her mobile phone to use the QR code. And I'll give you a minute.
Do you see actually the Menti slide?
No, we are in the once upon a time.
Oh, come on.
That's okay. I mean, I can assure you that along the next hours we will have a ton of technical issues, but we will solve all of them.
Okay, so now you see once upon a time, right?
Exactly. And if you go one slide back, there, as I said, if you can also use the code. And as you can see there, www.menti.com and the 8-digit code. And in the meantime, I will start the presentation.
Okay, I stop.
Yeah, actually, I need to, in order for you to see the results, please bear with me, because as I said, I'm sure that we're going to be having. Okay, so I'm going to share my own screen now. And you should be able now, if you go to this URL, to menti.com, exactly there. I can see some of them have already started putting in their input. So how are you feeling this afternoon? Let us know. I mean, for me, it's lunchtime. I had lunch for 10 minutes, and but I'm quite happy also to be here. As I said, this is an area which is of core interest for us right now, for my organization as EURAXESS Spain coordinator. So it's a huge opportunity, and we're really thankful that Svetlana invited us to participate here, because it's always nice to get the feedback directly from the potential users of these things. So we can see there that people are interested, some are feeling good, some are okay, which is also fine. Some are curious about what we're going to be hearing today. We got some people who are excited, rested, under rested, I would understand, or interested. Okay, so thank you very much. This was a little bit also for you to get the dynamics of how this is going to work with Menti. So let's go to yet another question that we have for you. Who do we have here? Which is your position? We have an assumption that most of you are researchers, but we want to hear. So majority of researchers, some other.
We definitely have 3 support staff here, because
yes.
me, you, and Elena are in there.
Exactly. Okay, so a majority of researchers. Perfect. And going now to the next question. For those who are researchers, which is your career stage? You have there the European research framework that we use to try to homogenize. So basically you have the R1, which is just up until the level of PhD, so PhD candidates basically. R2, which are early postdoctoral researchers. R3, which are already postdoctoral researchers, maybe not in a permanent position, but already leading teams. And probably no R4s in the room. Those are always difficult to engage in these kinds of activities. So the deans, chairs, things like that, professors. Okay, so R1 researchers. So this is it for the moment. And now we can go back to the presentation. Now knowing a little bit who is in the room and knowing how we are going to be using Mentimeter. So Svetlana, if you can share the slides again. There, in the once upon a time. It's not in presentation mode in case you want to change it. I mean, I think I don't have, well, some of the text might be a little bit small, but you will have the slides in any case. So I'll start in the meantime. As I was saying, I used this slide about once upon a time because the truth is that the EURAXESS initiative was launched officially in 2008 as an extension of another initiative, which was called ERAMOR. Well, basically ERAMOR was transformed into EURAXESS, but let's say, for the sake of clarity, that EURAXESS was born in 2008. And it was focused, next slide, please. And it, like many other initiatives, also especially with a bit of, let's say, a bit of time connected to them, it has evolved a little bit. Can you pass the slide, Svetlana, please?
Do you see the next one?
No, not yet. Seems like it's frozen.
Frozen on Once Upon a Time, huh?
Yes.
Oh, come on. This is always like this.
We have to live with this. It's in these virtual times that we are living now.
I will start sharing again. And for the sake of avoiding this, I will start sharing actually not in a slide mode, in a slideshow mode. Please tell me if you see enough big.
For me, it's fine. Maybe in the following slides there will be some parts, but I think that we can. I mean, it will be okay like this. I believe.
I will try to enlarge it a bit. Is it okay? Better now?
I mean, for me, it's fine. I mean, and I know what the content is. If anybody in the audience has any issues, just
let us know. Yeah.
Let us know in the chat or raise your hand or whatever, or just yell out and stop for a minute. So next slide. We're saying that the EURAXESS initiative has had a bit of an evolution. So EURAXESS was born, promoted by the European Commission as a tool to build the European research area. And particularly, there was a point, this is a bit outdated already, but again, for the sake of clarity, it's easier to just put it like this. The building of VERA, a number of priorities were established of things that should be done in order to make the European research area a reality. And one of the priorities was actually an open labor market for researchers. So a way in which within the European Union or within the European research area, researchers could move from one country to the other without any borders. And EURAXESS should help them by tackling practical issues related to especially to international mobility. But even at that stage, although I'm talking about international mobility, intersectoral mobility was within the DNA of the initiative. So when we were thinking about EURAXESS, it was not only facilitating the possibility that researchers went from academic institutions in one country to academic institutions in another, but also from academic institutions to other non-academic institutions in one country or in the same one. So at the beginning of EURAXESS, we had a focus, especially in this support of mobility and in the support of this open labor market. And this meant that we were particularly keen on providing visibility to mobility opportunities. So go to the next slide, please. So we were basically, in terms of intersectoral mobility, what we were doing at that time, at those early times in EURAXESS, and again, generally speaking, because EURAXESS is a very diverse network, we had the mission when it comes to intersectoral mobility of trying to engage non-academic organizations in ongoing EURAXESS activities. The most simple and straightforward example that you can think of is basically trying to get more non-academic job advertisements in the EURAXESS jobs portal. So at earlier times, we devoted quite some time to actually see how the institutions, we had a focus not so much on the researcher as a professional, as a person, but in the research organizations. So we devoted some time to try to see how institutions were actually engaging with industry. Within the institutions, the people who worked in the EURAXESS initiative, how, if they had any kind of engagement with industry, how this was done. And you can see there's some early results, seeing that the truth is that a lot of service centers and contact points, so basically EURAXESS representation within academic institutions, admitted that they had some kind of connection with industry or with the non-academic sector, but a majority of them were through other structures of the organization. Most significantly, technology transfer office, or through any kind of structure which was in the sense of an industrial liaison office. So most of these activities which were done were based, as I said, in providing visibility to EURAXESS and trying to use these organizations or these structures within the institutions that already had a closer connection with industry, trying to use those channels to attract non-academic organizations towards EURAXESS. So to let them know that we are EURAXESS, we are a network of people providing services, or we have a job portal, which is visited by people from all over the world. So please come and use our services. Next slide. This, for example, is another early result that we had, in which was also a work that was done within one of the European projects. And it was directly aimed at the EURAXESS people, trying to support them in setting out, let's say, communication and promotion strategies to do what I was saying, trying to attract industry organizations or non-academic organizations to use our services. This is just a little bit of walk through the history of EURAXESS. Next slide. Even there was a time where you probably, or hopefully most of you will know the EURAXESS portal as it stands right now, but before 2016, the portals had a quite different structure. We still had the jobs database, the central jobs database as a shared infrastructure, but then each of the national portals were set up and managed by the national coordinators. So we had one of our Irish colleagues, actually, they decided to pilot the possibility of simplifying the interface to publish job advertisements in order to try to get Irish companies to post more offers in EURAXESS jobs. And actually, this was a quite successful pilot, although unfortunately it couldn't be, I mean, it didn't have a continuation when the structure of the portals, which took us to the current version of the portals, was prepared. Substituted the previous structure. Again, we also had some trials, some pilots, and some lessons learned about how to set up events with companies. So, for example, kind of career days and things like that. But all the time with this approach that I'm telling you. On one hand, providing resources to the institutions to allow the institutions to improve their collaboration with industry, and by extension, the potential intersectoral mobility of their research staff, and to attract the non-academic organizations to joining in the existing EURAXESS services. Next slide. Connected to this, I showed you there a little bit in this previous structure, a little bit the evolution, what we could say, what EURAXESS has been taking care of. And at some point, actually was a bit in parallel, but it was a bit of a development. You might be aware that we also play a role in terms of institutional policies. And this is basically providing visibility and, to the best of our possibilities, support to, once again, the academic institutions to align their human resources policies across Europe in order to contribute to this open labor market. Speaking clearly, basically what we do, we did at that time and we still do now, is promoting the Charter and Code as a set of principles and the implementation of the Charter and Code principles through the human resources strategy for researchers. And connected with this facilitating of the institutions collaborating with industry, I'm going to show you one last thing, which is currently available also in the EURAXESS portal. Next slide, please. Which is a kind of toolkit or a kind of guide of potential collaborations between academic organizations and non-academic organizations. I think we're stuck again in the slides, Svetlana, I'm sorry. Okay, there it is. So you will have the link if you're curious. Again, this is output which was designed for the institutions, not for the researchers. So you might not be so interested. But a little bit before closing this chapter, if I'm not mistaken, we have one more question and Mentimeter for you at this point, which if you stop sharing now, Svetlana, I go back to my Mentimeter. Because I'm talking a little bit in the sense of past activities, and it's past in some way, because as I said, that was the way that most of us addressed intersectoral mobility. So through trying to improve the way that academic institutions engage with industry. And this is still relevant. I mean, this is still something that we are doing right now. So in this case, I would like to have a little poll for you, which if you go now to the Mentimeter with the same code, yes, I've seen that some people have already voted there. We would like to hear from you. What kind of activities organized by academic institutions you would be interested in having in order to a possible intersectoral mobility experience? Would you like to have joint research initiative?
Going to share the screen with the.
Oh, sorry. Thanks for reminding me. I was convinced that I was sharing it. Sorry. Hopefully you can see it now.
Yes, thanks.
So from 1 to 5, just to summarize a little bit the replies, because maybe it's not so easy to see. So we see that the most interesting, and actually I'm really happy to see that, the most interesting kind of initiative that participants in this webinar would like to see in institutions are mentoring programs to help the researchers connect with non-academic organizations, so with non-academic mentors, followed by established alumni networks. Actually, mentoring programs and alumni networks are really closely connected, or can be really closely connected, and followed by joint research activities between academia and businesses, which is obviously, it depends on many external factors, but I can think, for example, I don't know, in on Marie Sklodowska-Curie doctoral networks, or even co-fund programs, which can facilitate this kind of things. Okay, so thank you very much for the feedback. Go back to the presentation if you want. Are you sharing the slides, Svetlana? I cannot see it. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
I started sharing. However, it for some reason doesn't want to move. Oh, now moves, yes.
Yeah, please go a little bit up. Okay, sorry, that was
Up?
it. Yes, I go back to this figure because now we get into the interesting part. I mean, as I said, the previous one was a little bit, I mean, it's resources that are there in the portal. So I think it might have some use for you, at least to know that they are there. It definitely has use for us due to the poll that we have presented. But now we get to the important part, which is basically not so long ago, some point at 2016 or something like that. EURAXESS receives this extension of mandate. So we kind of get this message that instead of supporting only mobility, mostly international mobility, but also, as I said, intersectoral mobility of researchers, we should try to the best of our possibilities to provide a more holistic kind of support with researcher career development as a framework. So supporting the career development of the researchers to contribute to this open labor market of researchers. So providing resources which will facilitate the researchers to move from one sector to the other, and of course from one country to the other. So next slide. And this is where we start showing you some resources which might be useful for you if you start thinking about a possible change of career, of professional sector, from academia to non-academia. This diagram that you see there is a general assumption of how the career development of researchers is planned, basically proposing 4 steps that need to be taken in order for a researcher, in this case, basically any professional, to plan his or her career development. So we have basically 4 steps. The first one, which is linked to a self-assessment. The second one, which is about exploring options. The third one, which is about focusing on certain actions that you need in order to make whatever change you have decided to do as part of your career planning. And the final step, which is preparing the plan itself. So I'm going to try to use this profile to show you the resources which can be helpful for you in an intersectoral, when confronting the possibility of an intersectoral mobility experience. So first, next slide, we start with the self-assessment. Next one. As some of you may already know, because I'm aware that career development has been dealt with specifically in one of these webinars. When we're talking about self-assessment, we're talking about analyzing or taking into account somehow 4 traits which anybody has as a professional. Skills, which are the activities at which you are good and are normally technical. Technical, I mean, they are, well, such as, you can see there are some examples: writing, computer programming, and teaching. Then there are also values. It's not only about the skills, but it's also about the values. What you think is important for you. What would you like to achieve? Which is your current status? What level of autonomy you want to achieve? You also have to think about your interests, and your interests, of course, connected to your professional activity, but also your non-professional activity, because any decision at the end needs to take this into account. So when we're talking about interest, we might be talking about playing soccer or playing basketball or just spending time with your family. And also your personality traits. In order to do this, we're actually going to focus, and I'm going to ask you to please play a little bit with that career orientation tool that you have there, but we will get back to that immediately, because with the idea of addressing somehow this first possible step of self-assessment, we have this career orientation tool in the EURAXESS portal. And this is a toolkit which tries to, based on a number of questions and answers, you receive some advice and some quizzes and links to other resources which can help you take the next step. The way that I like to present this tool is actually, this is a very nice way of actually entering career development in general, because you have a bit of a reflection around these 4 main things that you need to talk about that I mentioned: the skill, values, interests, and personality traits. And it also provides you a bit of an introduction to other things which are generally referred to in career development, such as the skills taxonomy and things like that. But this is not the only option. We'll get back to that. Next slide, please. Some of you might be aware also of other tools which can serve in order to do this exploration or the self-assessment. Can you pass the slide, Svetlana, please? Such as the RDF, the Research Development Framework of Vitae. I'm sure many of you, if not all, have heard about it, but you can also use other structures, such as or other kinds of exercises, such as the SWOT analysis, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that are around your career development. You have some links there, but as I said, as we're talking about, we have a webinar which is focused on EURAXESS. We will be now playing with one of our tools in order for you to get a little bit familiarized with it. So next slide, please. So I'm going to give you the access to the career orientation tool in the chat. Okay. Give me a minute. Here you have it. And at the same time, and you can stop sharing the screen here, Svetlana, if you want to. And at the same time, because as I said, this is an opportunity for us also to strengthen these kinds of services. We're going to give you 10 minutes to go into this link, play around with options that you have there. I would suggest you to particularly focus on the tabs of values and motivations and the one of skills. And you can also check the one of plan your development, because career options is probably more connected to one of the other steps of any career development planning, but feel free to move around. And then based along these 10 minutes, we would like to ask you if you would be so kind to go into the Mentimeter and provide us with any kind of recommendations, thoughts, or reactions that you would have upon using this tool. So I'll start counting 10 minutes from now. And as I said, please go in, play a little bit with the tool, and you should be able to access the Mentimeter and provide any kind of feedback or comment that could come up for you. So 10 minutes starting from now. Okay, so I see that we already got a first important feedback, because one of the participants has mentioned that there was, when doing the report about the values, there was some issue with one of the links in the text. So we will make sure to check that out. Thank you very much.
With my browser, it is not the case. I just tested it and the report is shown. Priscilla, would you try again, please?
The idea with this exercise was, I mean, the main goal that we have is for you to know that this tool exists, so you can also further explore it afterwards. I see one of the comments already in the Menti, which is quite valid. I mean, everybody should be able to see it if I'm sharing the screen correctly, that some of these tools seem a little bit vague. And oh, please allow downloads. That's a very good input. Thank you very much. And that is to a certain extent, that's true also, that these are a little vague, because as I said, for me, the no limits, although in my opinion is one of the best tools that we have in the portal for this initial step of self-assessment, it's also, as I said, a nice entry point to understanding all this terminology that is used in career development. So for those who are already a bit more knowledgeable, it's quite, I mean, for me, it's easy to understand that the output initially may seem a little bit vague. So Svetlana, would you be so kind to share the slides again for me, please?
Sure, I'm starting. Do you see it now?
Yes, this is what we have just been doing. Okay, so this would be, as I said, one of the possibilities for that first step of self-assessment. In the portal, you have that tool that you have tested already, but there are some other resources, and actually the ones that I use there, the RDF of Vitae, and even the SWOT analysis for personal career moves are probably also, I mean, are also mentioned as a possible output of this career tool, so that you can see there's a connection between them. So next step, after making a self-assessment about your skills that you have, the values that move you in life, your motivations, and your interests, next step would be on exploration. Looking what are the options out there, learning a little bit about what skills that you already have may help you on a move to another sector, or which skills that you still do not have need to further develop. So for that, next slide, please. We're going to be focusing on one section that we have under career development, which is called Discover Careers Beyond Academia. Next slide. This section actually has different parts. I will go briefly over them. On the first section, which is generally called Beyond Academia, we have some initial information about this possible intersectoral move. So you will find information about what kind of jobs researchers who have already made the transition are already doing. So where researchers can actually go to beyond academic positions. You also have a bit of feedback that we collected through a project, but also links to other reports about how this experience is working. So the level of satisfaction, or which is the interest that of those people that have already made the transition, how the experience has been. And then we have a bit of information connected to competencies. Actually, we have a result of a project that you can see there also in the slide, which is a comparison of the skills on which researchers think that they are particularly good, and the skills that non-academic employers value in their potential employees. Don't worry too much about the side of the slide, because we're going to let you some time also to play around and browse around these sections. Next slide, please. The other part of the information that we have here in order to try to tackle this second step of your career planning is an overview of a number of sectors, of economic sectors in the region of Europe, in Europe. And this is also connected. Next slide. This information, no, sorry, previous one. I was not sure, sorry. And this information is also connected. You can see there that there are two tabs, the one of sector information and the one of jobs and competencies. So the way that this section is prepared is that you have information, an overview about a number of sectors, of economic sectors, and a link with relevant skills that apply to that sector. And through the next tab, the one that you see about jobs and competencies, is actually the same information, but from the other side of the spectrum. So starting from the point of skills or capacities that you may have, or that you are willing to strengthen, which ones can apply to the different sectors. Again, obviously, this is a very ambitious goal, what we have tried to do there. So the amount of information, obviously, not all economical sectors are there. Not all possible positions in all economical sectors are there, but we've done this with the best of our intentions and with the best of our care. Next slide. And then also one resource that we think that is extremely useful in this second step of your career management procedure, this exploration stage, are stories, testimonials of researchers who have already made a transition from an academic career to a non-academic career. So next slide, please. And in that tab that you see there, Plan Your Career, we have a bit of an overlap. It's a little bit of connection between the first step that I mentioned of the career management process, so the part of the self-assessment. It also connects, of course, with the one that we are currently dealing with, the exploration part, but it also includes a number of links, of resources, which are more connected to the two next steps of the career management procedure. So the one about training your own skills or preparing directly your career plan. So next slide. And before granting you a bit of time once again to consult this section, I would also like to mention another recent development that we have in that part of the national portal, of the EURAXESS portal, sorry, which is an output of the project, which actually provides the framework to this webinar. So it's something which is really recent. And is that, of course, this possible intersectoral move also includes entrepreneurship, so scientific entrepreneurship, preparing a startup and so on. So as this is a service which potentially could be also provided by EURAXESS, but of course it requires quite some expertise. Actually, it's a very specialized kind of support. We have let's say the first, I would dare to say that it's the first content linked to entrepreneurship in the portal, which is a manual for scientific entrepreneurship, an easy to use manual, we like to call it. And it's primarily focused at my peers. So at other EURAXESS people who might start thinking, well, as an EURAXESS center or as an EURAXESS person, I think I should start organizing or providing support for entrepreneurship to my researchers. Where can I start off? And that's the intention of this manual. Nevertheless, it can also be useful for researchers. So if it's something because of your research, you're having some kind of research output which you think that can be taken to the market and potentially lead to entrepreneurship, and you haven't had the chance of getting any additional training yet, this may be also a very nice starting point, because it provides you a bit of an overview of what is the scenario at European level, and it provides a nice overview about terminology and things which are used in the entrepreneurship world, which again, for someone like me, for example, who has never provided this kind of support and is not an entrepreneur, I mean, I'm not an entrepreneur myself, is very useful as a starting point for this kind of career path. So next slide, please. And here I'm going to shut up again. And I would like to ask you, I'm going to put it once again in the chat. I'm going to send you to the Discover section over which I provided you a bit of an overview. And once again, because we want to try to make this as practical as possible, once again, I would ask you to devote around 10 minutes to review the sections, the different tabs that you see there, check around the resources, familiarize with the content that you have there. And if you have any kind of let's say, reaction again, or any kind of recommendation, you are free to tell us through the chat. And in the Mentimeter, you will see that we have set up a ranking in order to try to see which part of these contents you find more relevant or more useful for a potential intersectoral mobility experience. So maybe you can stop now sharing the slides, Svetlana, which I think you already did. And I'm going to put on the Mentimeter where we already have a few first votes about the content. So starting from now, 10 minutes, check the different tabs in the Discover section. And I'll tell you just before we're finished, in the last few minutes, I will let you know, and please be so kind to vote which part you think is more useful.
But I see that we still have too little appreciation about the economical sector's information. That might mean that we need to either improve it or at least update it.
Yes, actually, my initial thought was probably that the amount of information, as I said, it's unrealistic to think about covering all economical sectors. So I'm not sure if it would be nice to hear from the audience, if you want to clarify in the chat, if this lower interest in this section of the tool is due to the limited amount of information, so it basically doesn't cover what you would be interested in learning about, or maybe the information is feels a little bit too general, or if it's because it's not really something that initially would trigger your way of looking for an intersectoral position.
I am also thinking, Javi, about the career stories. Maybe we will be able to add some more, or just change the stories from more recent.
Yes, that's true, because these were, I didn't go into the details, but most of these tools that we're showing, and it also explains a little bit why we take this opportunity also to get your feedback on using it, is because most of these tools have been developed in the framework of projects, of EU funded projects. And many of them would welcome some updating, and the career stories example is perfect. So at that time, we invested some time and resources in putting up these career stories with some examples. But of course, once you watch them, you probably would be looking for new opportunities. But as we have some other activities, I mean, like the mentoring programs we will be addressing afterwards, that it could be worth checking for updates there.
Yes, but we are going to have very soon new career stories recorded. We are currently working on that in EURAXESS, so it's a nice point to mark that we have to update this section. I see people either still change their mind or others maybe just wait to explore more about the tool and just then to vote, but major picture does not change too much.
Yeah. I mean, I had my own personal bet was that career stories would be probably the second option, but you probably hit the nail there with the fact that you need to have that updated with new input. So we have general information on Beyond Academia as the preferred section, so sort of the introduction to the Beyond Academia world. There's also some interesting information in that section you may have seen. That comparison between the skills that are in which researchers think they are good and the skills which non-academic employers value, you probably have noticed that the difference is not so big, which is one of the things when we start talking about what's the limit, one of the limits between academia and non-academia has to do with this sort of change of culture, because and this has some implications on skills, but you realize that once you start asking and you ask the people from one side and the other to do a ranking, the differences are not so big. The other piece of information which I find particularly clarifying there are those numbers about the satisfaction of those researchers which left academia. I mean, a small percentage of them did it, let's say, in a planned way. So it was a bit more typical example. You run out of funding, your contract is over, and there's not a possibility of extending it, and eventually you end up outside of academia. So in general, when you see those studies and those reports, a majority of the researchers have that feeling. But then the level of satisfaction of those researchers outside of academia currently is extremely high. I don't remember the exact number, but it was something around 87% or something like that of them said that they were satisfied or extremely satisfied, which, by the way, are higher levels of satisfaction than those that are staying in academia. So there are some important pieces of information there that can help you in this exploration mode. So I'm going to stop sharing the Mentimeter for the moment. And we are going back to the slide for the third part, the third step of the career management procedure. Which actually, I will admit already, it's put there in the slides. Next slide, please, Svetlana. I will admit that this is probably the part of the career management process that has less resources in the portal, in which we should try to focus on improving. And actually, this is going to be directly a poll for you as researchers interested in intersectoral mobility. So just as an introduction, I mean, this third step, I already mentioned it before, but basically you have done a first assessment of where you are, where you would somehow like to go. You do an exploration process in order to that direction that you want to go to try to fine tune it a little bit and be more targeted on your objective. And once you have a bit of an idea of where you would like to go, you, as part of the exploration process, should also have a bit of an assessment of what things you need to do in order to get there. And in terms of skills, that may mean reinforcing some skills that you already got, or directly working on specific skills that you need or you haven't been able to develop until now in your academic research career and that you will need it for a future position. How can you get these skills? Well, getting training, obviously, also practice by doing, or speaking with somebody who has some expertise on that given area. This is where mentoring programs come in. And in order to get some feedback that will help you do this change. Next slide, please. As I said, as we are talking mainly about capacity building resources, as I said, this is an area which we are aware that we need to improve in terms of content in the portal, and we're working quite hard in it. And I would like to highlight two things. The first one is this section about webinars and trainings, which you have some examples there. I mean, to a webinar about open science and IPR, a webinar about civil writing, a webinar about building networks, a webinar about project management. You have a few more there in the link. And actually, those videos are coming from these kinds of activities. So exactly like this video is coming. So it's, as I said, these are resources that we are developing live, basically. Next slide. And then this comes from a little bit further back, but also with a disclaimer, because with this idea of providing learning opportunities, we have a section of the portal where we started some time ago collectively, EURAXESS as an initiative, to try to put together different types of resources. And I'm thinking about training materials such as online trainings, webinars, articles, case studies, presentations.
That are free for use.
That are free for use, very important. Thank you, Svetlana. And as you can see there, I put there a huge warning because the truth is that we started building this basically on our initial steps towards supporting career development back in 2016. But it's remained a bit outdated. So we have some content there and we would be quite interested in hearing from you. Next slide, please. We're going to put you to work again. And I was thinking, maybe some of you saw it as I was sharing my screen. This time, we're not going to use 10 minutes. You do not need 10 minutes to explore those two sections, which I'm once again going to share with you in the chat. So you can easily click and go to each of them. So it's the section about the webinars. Here it goes. And the section with the learning opportunities. And especially in the second one, you will see there that we have quite a nice list of, let's say, skills or areas in which you have learning resources. But some of them, I tell you in advance that some of the links are broken. So basically, in this case, I would like to ask you, and we'll give you 5 minutes to just check these two areas. And once again, and now you can stop sharing your screen, Svetlana. And once again, I'm going back to Mentimeter. And please be so kind to suggest us topics that we could include here. So 5 minutes, starting from now.
Actually, at the first link, you might see videos and information from all the trainings that we did recently. So some of you know about them, so make more, more attention to the Piper's toolkit. While you're exploring these two sections that have shared with you, I want to just inform you that we are now working on 3 more opportunities for adding topics to the webinars and seminars. These are on leadership, So if you think we need to add more on leadership, be sure that it will be available soon by the end of March. You'll be invited to support this creation, and also another topic will be data management.
We got the first suggestions there. So maybe some content connected to writing. I understand maybe the writing of articles, or maybe it would be the writing of
Exactly, research writing.
education, relations, fair, internships, learning.
Practical internships and all kind of funding are available in another section, so most probably we will not address this topic.
Actually, we are aware that in an ideal world, short-term internships would be an excellent way of bringing closer academic and non-academic organizations. Although definitely for us, EURAXESS, organizing those kinds of activities would be quite challenging. It's also complicated from the side of the researchers and the own organizations. But it's definitely an area that would benefit from having more opportunities available. Funding, writing, interdisciplinary focus, intersectoral moves, open science practices. Okay, so last 15 seconds. If anybody has any additional ideas, you already provide us there with some very useful and interesting suggestions. And if not, then we can maybe go to the last part of this first section about the career development resources that we currently have in the portal, and which can help you in an eventual intersectoral move. So the last part would be basically putting together it's a bit building upon the other, touching upon the other parts, but it's basically putting it all in a plan. So next slide, please. So for this section, just provide a few tips about what we're talking about. So it means that you structure somehow all the information that you compile through the self-assessment, through the exploration, and through the planning of your next steps, or your next let's say your next trainings, or your next the next skills that you will be approaching, and putting them in a structured way, answering those questions that you see there. So what actions and concrete steps you need in order to achieve that work that you may want to reach, you may want to reach, sorry. Where can you get help? Because probably some support you can get it. Once again, here we have a potential interesting connection with the mentoring programs, and who can support you in those steps. The idea is that at the end of this process, in this last fourth step, you would have a plan to help you explore your options further, or a plan which sets out the steps to help you achieve your next learning or work goal. So it might be, I want to the steps to get to that position in industry that you're looking for, or it might be on a shorter term, the next steps you are going to do before attempting that leap to that position that you're dreaming in industry. And one thing that you have probably heard in many other scenarios, and which definitely apply to career management, and it's that you have to try to set up SMART goals, meaning SMART as an acronym for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. In that sense, please, next slide, please. In that sense, you have just been in a section where, as Svetlana pointed out, we are putting in all the information or all the webinars that are taking place together with this one about intersectoral mobility and mentoring. And not so long ago, there was one specifically devoted to how to plan your research career paths. Of course, here we're talking a bit, we're trying to focus a little bit on intersectoral career paths. But as I say, the methodology applies even if what you want to do is a career plan for staying in academia. So for that, I mean, I have to say I'm not an expert myself, but we have very good experts within the network, such as Dean Hogan, who provided this webinar. And you will have, I would invite you to check it out if you are interested in looking into more detail about how you can do these 4 steps that you are doing. But apart from that, next slide. I'm going to show you a couple of resources. Actually, this is not one of us, but I included this one because it's one of the resources that Dean mentioned in his own webinar, which is a template for doing this career plan. And it was a bit a comparison before showing you our EURAXESS resource that we have for somehow doing this last part of the career management process. It's a template which guides you through questions through those steps that probably at this point sound very familiar to you. The first one about stop and take stock. The second one about assessing your academic career progress. And the third one about considering career options. And the way that this template that you can download from that link, the way that it works is basically posing questions and making you think about structured replies. And as I said, these structured replies, if you ever start doing this exercise, which I hope you will do at some point, as I said, for staying in academia or for going to, or for exploring other academic, non-academic paths. You answering those questions through those goals that I said that should be SMART. But next slide. But the resource that I'm going to show you as part of the EURAXESS resources that we already got is another nice application that was developed led by a project, in this case, led by some Slovakian colleagues, which is what we call the Reflex App. And this is an online application which is developed to help the researchers, but also institutions, a little bit still keeping in mind this institutional approach that I mentioned in the first steps. The institutions and also professionals who are providing career development support to set up a career development plan. That's the intention of the application. So keep in mind, because I'm going to show it to you now. I'm going to share my screen and show it to you and let you play a little bit with the application. But keep in mind that this application tries to cover these 3 parts. So from the side of the institution, it's a way in which an institution, so for example, an EURAXESS center, could analyze and develop a systematic and strategic approach to their career development activities. It's a tool quite useful also for supervisors, because it would allow a supervisor to sit down with an early stage researcher, with a PhD candidate, for example, and plan their career development efforts for the coming year or for the coming 3 years or whatever. In the sense, for example, of the Marie-Claude career actions, which require researchers to prepare at the beginning of the action a career development plan to be implemented along the coming years. And from the side of the researchers, it's a way to structure ideas. Again, as I said, I showed you the previous example. And most of these tools actually follow a similar approach, which is trying to guide you through questions in order to set up to get your own replies. So the last part that I'm going to show you, next slide, is the tool itself. So I'm going to share with you the link in the chat. But before I do that, and you can stop sharing now, Svetlana, please. Because what I'm going to try to do is to show you in my screen how this works. Because initially it's I believe it is a very nice tool for these objectives that I mentioned. But maybe it's a little bit overwhelming at the beginning, precisely because it has these different potential uses. So I will pass you afterwards the link and provide you a few minutes to play with. But hopefully, please confirm, Svetlana, that you're seeing the Reflex application.
Yes, at least I see it.
Okay. So you will, once you go in, you will see you have several modules, let's call them. One of them focused on career advice, one of them focused on academic skills and development, one of them focused on company and organizational interaction, one of them focused on mobility, and one of them focused on networking. So basically what you will be able to do with this tool is to plan actions in these different areas. So I'm going to show you first how it looks, everything. So you can see that you have here each of these areas that I mentioned: career advice, academic skills and development, the company and organizational interaction, mobility, and networking. And initially, each of these sections offer a number of actions or items you can do, you can implement as part of this module. And what you can do here, the idea is that playing around with these different boxes and adding your own boxes, you will be able to come up with a kind of skeleton of a career development plan. So I'm going to show you, for example, what I could do. I go back to my initial view, which is the one that you will be seeing in the chat, and I'm going to be focusing, as this is about intersectoral mobility, on company and organizational interactions. You have the possibility, you see that you have up here a dashboard, which allows you actually to save the work that you are doing in order to continue working or doing it in several steps, and also to share it with other people. So for example, the example that I was mentioning about working on a career development plan collectively, the supervisor and the PhD candidate. So here you can call it whatever you want. I'm going to put it Xavi's Plan to Escape Academia. And as I said, the tool already suggests you a number of things which might be relevant or might not be relevant to you. So I see here that I have a first one, which is a possible company visit. I have another one, which is technology transfer. I have another one, which is an employment panel, company and job fair matchmaking, an internship. So you can play around with these things however you feel, and you can discard them and edit them as needed. So for example, in my case, I'm thinking I've just finished my PhD, and I've decided by no ways I'm going to stay in academia. And I really want to make it out to a company. But I'm not completely sure. I know that my background is, I've done a PhD in biotechnology, for example. And the first thing that I want to do is, for example, go to a career fair. I want to know companies. So I will put this as the first one, company and job fair. And I can include here what I would like to do. So identify all the biotechnology career fairs available on the first quarter of 2022. And as I said, following a little bit the logic of your SMART goals, I'm going to do this by the end of February 2022. And you can save it here. And then what is going to be my aim there? Well, maybe my aim is going to be knowing which are the companies and maybe getting a company visit. Might be one of my aims. So secure a company visit. And if I'm planning that I will be seeing fairs during the first quarter until April 2022, then I'm going to set this as a goal for May 2022. An internship, no, it's not a moment for an internship. So maybe you don't want it, you have some options here. Do not use this submodule and you can delete it. Technology transfer, that's quite relevant. It's a skill that I need to do. And here I can edit it also. So I hope that you all got a little bit the idea of how this works. So if you don't mind, then I would suggest you to go into the tool. And in this particular case, let me see, chat, and send it to everybody. We would let you an additional 10 minutes to try to play around with the tool, just to get familiarized, to check what the options are there, what options you got there. And well, feel free. In this case, we're not going to ask you about any specific feedback because it would be difficult through the poll. But if anybody wants to have any kind of reaction or anything, we are more than happy to hear it. So I'm making sure that I send the link to everybody, and 10 minutes counting from now. Okay, people. So it's actually around 7 minutes now, but again, I mean, you're not going to get in these 10 minutes. It's not like you're going to be able to finalize a career development plan with the Reflex tool, but hopefully, like in the case of the resources that we showed them, you are aware now that they exist. As you will have the slides, you will have the access to all of them directly in the slides, so no need to save the links right now. And I wonder if, I mean, we started at 2, so it's been for a while already. We're almost in the half of the time that we estimated. So I'm not sure. Maybe we can. How are people feeling? Do you want to go for a rest before we jump into the next section? Well, of course, if anybody has questions about all these part of resources that I've just presented, before Svetlana takes over on some other EURAXESS, let's say, services and functionalities that might help you when talking about intersectoral mobility. But maybe you want to have a rest before Svetlana takes over, or how do you see it, Svetlana?
I am pretty much fine with continuing, but it depends whether they are tired. So whoever wants to have a break now, vote in the chat, or you would prefer to continue?
And then we will be able to finish earlier.
Yeah, right.
Whatever the audience prepares. I'm fine also.
Silence in the chat. They maybe are considering whether to have a.
Okay, we got 2. Let's go. Then let's go.
Okay, let's go then. Please share this question that I asked you.
Yes, here we go now. If you go back to Menti, you will have one question for you. And sorry, I did the same thing. I didn't share my screen, which is what I need to do. Okay, there we go. So, all the people in the room, are you registered in the EURAXESS portal?
It's a very simple question.
Yes or no? Actually, there's an option 3 there, but I'm afraid that's been my fault. Option 3 probably doesn't make any sense to anybody.
Option 3 is actually whether you consider yet. Not sure. Not sure what benefits it can bring you, actually. Six reactions.
Anybody else? What EURAXESS?
Maybe we can consider missing answers for no.
Yes. So a majority of the people, although all the replies that we got is a yes, the lack of replies invites us to think that the majority of the people in the room are not registered in EURAXESS.
Then might be for all of you will be very helpful if you follow the next few slides with me.
Okay, so I stop sharing now and the floor is definitely yours.
Okay, I start sharing again the presentation. Sorry. Thank you for answering this very short question. And with the next few slides, we will see together how EURAXESS actually we can help you further. You saw several tools, materials. This is definitely not everything that is on the portal. And there are also other sections of the portal, not only tools and resources, but other sections that might be interesting for you. Jobs and Funding offers information for researchers like you and also for organizations. Organizations are able to publish their job offers, are able to look for future employees through their profiles. In career development, you can find much more than what you saw already within the first part of our seminar. Partnering is definitely something that needs registration, and this is a tool where research teams and organizations can find, also researchers can find partners for application for funding. Information and assistance are related, all of these subsections are related to the national portals, because everything that exists on information and assistance is practically sourced from the national portals, and the EURAXESS worldwide is the page that is developed and also maintained by our EURAXESS officers that are based in third countries, and also their main goal there is to keep you informed about what is going in Europe, and also to keep contacts with the researchers that are left from Europe to these third countries. So if you try to use the searching engine, you'll see that in most of the options chosen, I am and I want, you'll see that you need the registration. And maybe you'll ask yourself this question: why should I register if practically all EURAXESS resources and tools are free and publicly available? This might be beneficial for you for several reasons. First, having a profile in EURAXESS gives you opportunity to make part of it public, part of it private. And this part that is actually public makes your visibility much higher. All the researchers that are registered on the EURAXESS portal will be able to see into your profile and to look for your partnership in some activities, some applications for funding. Also, organizations can look at your CV and reach you for employment. This is actually the case when they didn't publish their job offer, but they are still looking for employee. Also, using the job and funding section, that is quite possible without registration. With the registration, gives you a bit more functionalities. When you look for a job, you have the opportunity to save your search, meaning to save your searching criteria. And then plan the notifications for new offers that are available at the portal and that are published after that. These notifications might be daily, weekly, or even monthly, but it depends on you. And you receive on your email a notification that a new offer is available for you, and you may go and look for it and apply, of course. And partnering, as I mentioned, is definitely related to registration, because in order to find members of the EURAXESS portal and to find organizations that would like to partner with you on specific application, then you need to be registered. And I again would like to stress that as much as you do yourself visible to the research community, as much as higher is the opportunity you to be reached and engaged with your colleagues and with research organizations, whether they are public or private. The information and assistance, as I said, are this part of the portal is related to national portals. The information there is structured in 3 pillars, and in living in Europe, you have access to the host culture, to language courses, accommodation. Banking is very important, because without a bank account, you are practically not able to start working anywhere. Also, for your family, you may have assistance in daycare, schooling, or even looking for a job for your spouse. Also, support for departure formalities and conditions, entry conditions and visas, especially visas. And of course, that is very, very important, especially nowadays with this pandemic, health insurance and medical care. While you're in one of the European countries, you will work there, but you still need to pay attention to your career development, not only to work, but also to develop yourself and to advance in your career. For this, you will need training, career advice, and support that we offer. Intellectual property rights related to possibly your patents or your rights on publications are also important part of our support. And you have listed here a lot of pension, recognition of diplomas, information about taxes and salaries, unemployment that might happen to some of member of your family, and work permits. When you leave Europe, you definitely need support in, as I said, departure conditions, job opportunities after leaving, funding opportunities to continue cooperate with European countries and organizations, and of course, contacts with the worldwide officers. All these 3 pillars are structured in an information way, providing you with the information, and with personalized assistance. If you press Find Information, you'll be led to a page with the national portals, and you can press any of these nice boxes with national flags in order to reach the national portal, where you can find much more than just information. There is a lot of news, a lot of publications about events, invitations to different activities, and also there are a list of national contact points that you can reach, although they are also available through this search engine. If you press here, Find Personalized Assistance. If you press it, you'll be led to this search engine, and you'll find opportunity there to look through Here it's written 600, more than 600 EURAXESS support centers. There are definitely much more than 600. And in all these organizations work about 1,500 EURAXESS contact points, like me, Javi, Elena, people that are there and are ready to support you. If you press, for instance, Austria, and you write down in the searching engine universities, you'll find that in Austria there are 15 universities registered on the portal, and where you have your EURAXESS contact point. You'll have information about coverage area of these organizations. For instance, I chose here University of Graz, and you see that the support that you can get there is only within the institution, but there are also agencies registered on the portal that cover nationally or regionally the support that they offer. Also, you can have contact information that is very important: email, phone number, etc. Some of the colleagues provided also their Skype or their LinkedIn or whatever other contact may be useful for them. Very important is to see what is their expertise. For instance, here in Graz University, you see that the contact point can support you for access of the host country, of the culture of the host country, can arrange for you language courses, can give you access to accommodation, and will support you for finding reasonable accommodation for you and for your family. And there is a comma, because the list continues, but the picture I took does not include all of the expertise areas. Here I would like to stop and to ask you whether you have any questions about registration on the portal, and whether you you need any support on this, whether you see it useful for you. You may write also the questions in the chat as well. And if I see them later, I can answer during the other short break, if we will have any, actually. Okay, let's continue then. Now I would like to give the floor again back to Javi for a while to tell you details about Rebecca. Javi, what does it mean, Rebecca? Is it the abbreviation from these colored letters?
Yes, it stands for Researchers Beyond Academia mentoring program. And actually, this is it seems like I will be doing this all the time, but as I said at the beginning, EURAXESS as an initiative, we are aware that we still can do much more in terms of supporting intersectoral mobility and having relationships with the private sector, with the non-academic sector. But Rebecca is actually, once again, an activity that came up from a project. I will provide more details. It's a mentoring program, which precisely tries to put together early stage researchers interested in academic careers beyond academia. I mean, in professional careers beyond academia, with mentors who are outside of academia. So I'll provide more details about that, but I mentioned that I have to give a bit of a disclaimer here, because the truth is, I will tell you, the program is currently running. In your possibilities to participate in the program, if you have not been selected basically last week, when we had the kickoff meeting of this edition, I'm afraid that you will need to wait if you want to be a mentee or a mentor for a future session. But we still have some activities which will be open for everybody. So I'm just going to talk about the full mentoring program and then emphasize a little bit and ask you for some feedback about those activities which will be open for participation, which are obviously connected to intersectoral mobility. So next slide, please, Svetlana. So why do we do this? I mean, maybe we should have started with this at the beginning of the workshop, but I always use this figure when I talk about Rebecca, because you can see there that the reference, the source, is actually a study from the Royal Society in UK from 2010. So it's almost 12 years old already. And the truth is that the authors behind this figure actually admitted that it had some limitations because it was very focused on research careers in UK, and it was lacking the representation of some disciplines. But I like to use it and I like to emphasize it because the truth is that maybe the exact percentages, the exact career paths that are represented in that figure may not be the exact ones. And again, it may depend on the country, definitely. It may depend on the discipline. But the truth is that as a general framework, this figure was completely valid in 2010, and it's still completely valid in 2022. And what it represents, what I want you to focus in, is that a majority of the people who start a research career, and we can, for the sake of clarity, we can think about PhD candidates at the beginning of a research career. So a majority of the people who start a PhD thesis will not be able to have a full professional career in academia. Although this is not represented here, but I can tell you from many studies that have addressed this point, the majority of the people who actually start a PhD tend to be thinking in a traditional academic career. So as I said, the figures might not be exactly the same ones, but you probably would never lie if you say that between 3 and 10% of the PhD candidates will be able to remain in academia. The other, from 97 to 90% of researchers will go somewhere else. So I mentioned at the beginning that in general also, what studies show us is that this transition tends to be made by factors that we call push factors, which is represented again by the same example that I said before. You want to continue an academic career, but you're not able to do it because you do not have any funding available. Your contract comes to an end. The research team in which you're working doesn't get any additional funding or whatever. And then you need to find an alternative. So the reason why we tried to set up Rebecca is that, being aware of this situation, what we wanted to do is to offer an opportunity to early stage researchers to be, first, of being aware about the situation since day one of their research career, because of course, an academic career, I mean, we are totally in favor of academic careers, but as I said, this is not a matter of inviting people to go to one place or the other. It's a matter of numbers. You will not be able, a majority of researchers will not be able to stay in academia. So what we want to provide them is with information and with support in order to, whenever this transition comes, if it comes, is done in the most informed way and in the most planned way. So that's the spirit behind Rebecca. Next slide, please. Like the resources that I mentioned before, in EURAXESS, many of these things that we're able to pilot and test and fine tune and everything come from projects. So how did we come up? How did we build Rebecca? Well, actually, the starting point of Rebecca was a project which was called Top 4. It started in 2017, if I'm not mistaken. In any case, it was implemented in 2019, the mentoring program, and this was done in collectively with other partners, and it was done as a bit of a pilot because, as I said several times, from the side of EURAXESS, we have been limited in our success to engage industry or non-academic organizations in general in our EURAXESS activities. So as we were aware that it would be difficult when you set up any kind of mentoring program, and Svetlana will probably mention that a little bit in a couple of minutes. In any mentoring program, obviously the bottleneck is always going to be the mentors, the amount of mentors that you have available in order to provide support to the mentees. Because normally the interest from the side of the mentees will be there. So somehow you assume that the mentees will be arriving upon the call of the mentors, but the mentors are the bottleneck. And due to the nature of EURAXESS, this was a particular challenging bottleneck for us, trying to get mentors from outside of academia. So we did a first pilot, which turned out to be quite successful, as I will show you. We also learned a few things about how to do it better. And the experience in this case, we did it collectively in the project, but it was led by us, by FETIT, by the Spanish National Coordinator. And as we were the leaders, we were the ones which had more resources to devote to the program. It was particularly successful in the case of the Spanish pairs that we set up. From those 71 pairs, as you can see, we established 46 of them. We established them in Spain. And as it had such a nice impact, and it's a topic which is particularly, it's relevant in any country, the diversity of research careers, but it's definitely very relevant in Spain. Due to the success, our organization decided to support us in the implementation of a second edition, which we more or less set up, planned at the end of 2020, and we implemented during 6 months, between February and August, 7 months, sorry, in 2021. And in this particular case, we set up 80 pairs. So from the 46 that we had, the Spanish chapter in the pilot, we went to 80 pairs. And I will mention also other difference a little bit in a couple of slides. But I will also mention that this was also a great excuse for us to collaborate with diaspora associations of Spanish scientists around the world. We are lucky here in Spain. Well, we are not lucky because we have a large diaspora community, which maybe, many of us would like to actually have here in our country working and doing research, but things are as they are. And the good part is that we have quite a structured scientific diaspora of Spanish scientists in different countries. And actually they are well structured in a way that they even set up a network, which is called EURAXESS, which is the representation of these diaspora associations here in Spain. And the way that we implemented Rebecca as a FECIT activity, as an EURAXESS Spain activity, was in collaboration with EURAXESS. So most of the participants, the nationality was Spanish, but we had 20% of the participants of those 80 pairs, of those 160 people, who were actually located outside of Spain. So it was a nice way of collaborating with our diaspora association. And then we get to the third edition, which is the one that we launched basically last week. This is being implemented at European level with the support of a European project again, EURAXESS Hubs. The mentoring period started now in February, as I said, last week, and it will be running until July. And one important difference is that in this case, we are going to try to make these matchings across Europe. So we have a European dimension in the program to try to see how it works when putting together mentors and mentees from different countries. And then there is two more additions in order to try to enrich it, which is we're trying to use the push that the mentoring program provides us to create a community. So for community building, the community interested in intersectoral research careers. And we're going to be having some matchmaking events with non-academic organizations as employers and researchers as potential employees. So we're sort of trying to put in some more content into the Rebecca concept. Next slide, please. So the concept in all three editions is the same one. As I said, mentees, on the side of the mentees is early stage researchers wanting to explore professional options beyond academia. And in the case of the mentors, I like the definition, but as you will see, let's say the official definition is what you can see there: highly skilled professionals connected with STEM and social sciences and humanities, which basically for us means anybody other than academic researchers connected somehow to the R&D and I world. Next slide, please. The way that we implement the program since the first edition is that we went, after securing a minimum number of mentors, which, as I said, is quite a challenge for us, but it's becoming better because of the impact of the program. So we actually got mentors who are expecting now that the call will come in order to participate in the program. But we officially went for open calls for mentees and mentors. Actually, of the current edition, the call for mentees, we had it open for 3 weeks in November. For mentors, sorry, 3 weeks in November. And the call for mentees were around last week of November, next 2 weeks of December. We did it in two steps because based on the amount of mentors that we had available at European level, we would know how many mentees we could accept in the program. We have to go through a pre-selection first. In the case of the mentors, it's pretty straightforward because it's, as I said, our profile of mentors is quite diverse and quite wide. But it does happen that every now and then, due to communication issues from our side, maybe we didn't put the message correctly or it wasn't clear or something, we have received some applications to become mentors who are really academic researchers. So basically, we just do that check to make sure that the mentors are these non-academic profiles that we're looking for. But in the case of the mentees, and I will show you some numbers afterwards, we normally receive double or more than double of the available mentors. So we have a bit of a selection, a pre-selection process in order to make, based on some question that we post in the registration. But once we got that selection, which is basically, roughly speaking, is a 1 mentor versus 2 potential mentees ratio, we start looking into the professional expertise of the mentors and their possible contributions to the program, so their knowledge, their skills, and so on. And we look for the best match possible in the pool of potential mentees based on their interest and beyond academia sectors, positions, and their interest and what they would like to do. So the matches that we make are based, although we do have to make a pre-selection, especially in the case of the mentees, as I said, later the matches are completely defined by this criteria. So that's the important part. And then just as a reference, what we try to do is that definitely in the previous 2 editions, which were kind of national implementation system, we kept a ratio, a sex ratio based on the applications. So we try to respect the percentage of, for example, in the case of the mentees, where almost half of them or more than half of them will not be able to participate in the program because we cannot match them with a mentor. We try to respect the sex ratio of the applications that we receive. Like in many other career development support, I will tell you that a majority of the applications tend to be from women. And now in this European dimension, we did the same with the country approach. So again, using as a reference this 1 versus 2 ratio for doing later on the selection, depending on the number of mentors we had in the country, we tried to have as double the number of mentees. And later, as I said, regardless of the country, the matchmaking was based on this criteria. Next slide, please. Then we developed some resources, because this is also something that we like to say, especially when we're looking for the mentors. And it's that, of course, being a formal mentor requires training. And we are lucky to count with many mentors who, due to having participated in previous programs, but also because they have received specific training, they could be called, let's say, professional mentors. But this is not the case for all the participants. And it shouldn't be the case because of the nature of the program. Because like I said, what we want to do here is that we want to offer the early stage researchers a window to another professional career. So here we're not looking for expert mentors. What we're looking is for professionals who are willing to share their professional experience. So you do not need to be a professional mentor or have any kind of ad hoc training as a mentor to be a mentor in this program. What you need to have is in beyond academia career path experience beyond academic experience, sorry. So, but with this idea, we develop a number of resources and activities in order to try to facilitate the connection of the pairs. Because of course, we tell the pair that for 6 months, we're hoping that you will be meeting an average of 6 times. So an average of one meeting per month, approximately. And in order to facilitate this possible connection, we offer our key resources, what we call the handbook, the Rebecca handbook. You can see there, I mean, the way that we focus this handbook is that we define a number of topics which we know are relevant for intersectoral career moves. And we try to collect a little bit of information in the sense of food for thought. So some references, some links to articles related to those topics that we propose. We also suggest which goals the mentee and the mentor could establish for their pair connected to that specific topic. And we also suggest a number of guiding questions around that topic. And there you can see the 6 topics that we prepared for the initial mentoring program, which we put together collectively, as I said, in this first European project. And actually, for example, Svetlana was part of that working team and helped us prepare this, as with partners from Hungary, from Israel, and so on. But then in the second edition, next slide, please. And based on the experience, we decided to increase the number of topics. So we still kept the same ones that we had in the previous handbook, but we enriched them with some additional content. And the reason why we did this is because the feedback that we got from the participants in regards to the handbook in the first edition actually went from one side to the scale to the other one. So some people said that they couldn't address all of the topics because it was not manageable, or just because of the nature of the pair, of the mentor and mentee pairing, they didn't have too much interest in some of the topics. But we also went to the other side of the scale, which is people who said, like, yeah, you know, in one meeting we basically finished the handbook. So we decided, okay, with this idea of not obliging people to use it, but helping them as much as possible to facilitate their conversation, we decided to increment the numbers. By the way, you see you have a link there in the case of the 2020 handbook or 2021, and you had a link also in the previous one, because those handbooks are freely available and you can download them from the EURAXESS portal. Next slide, please. Another resource that we prepare, and again, as a recommendation, and it's very linked to all the story that I told you before about the career management steps, is a career development template. Actually, it's a rather simplified career development template, which we decided to do. And the idea is that we invited mentees to use it in order to collect the information they get from their mentors. Because probably if they have 6 conversations along 6 months, the information will remain quite clear in their head for some time, but then it's quite easy to start forgetting about things. So especially if you get any kind of potential contacts or, I don't know, possible events in which the mentee could participate in order to re-strengthen their next step and so on. So they can use this template to collect all of this information. Next. And then we enrich the mentoring program with trainings or with networking events. We have, of course, for sure, a kickoff workshop, which is basically putting together all the mentors and mentees, which is the one that we had last week, basically to set the basis of the mentoring relationship, just to provide some general information of what a mentoring relationship should be, what a mentoring relationship should not be, and also to emphasize the fact that we provide quite some flexibility, because at the end of the day, all of these pairs can be quite heterogeneous. One particular example, we had the luck of having mentors who were leaders or directors of human resources department. So they are people who their daily work is having interviews, publishing job offers, and so on. So you can imagine what kind of support they could offer the mentee. But then you have other mentor, which is maybe, I don't know, an engineer who has been working for some time in some industrial company, and then afterwards moved to a consultancy and eventually set up his or her own company. So obviously that person has a whole bunch of information due to their professional expertise, but maybe cannot provide any kind of support in terms of how to face a personal interview or how to prepare a CV the best way possible. So what we try to set up in these meetings is this idea that you have some flexibility, you have a lot of flexibility to focus on whatever works well and have the mentees and mentors together. On top of that, we, from the very beginning, in every edition, we have decided to offer the mentees a training connected to this career development move. Basically touching things that you can see there. Career management techniques, like a little bit what we have done very superficially in the previous session. Preparation of non-academic CVs, and also some general information about what does this beyond academia imply. If you want to think about that first section in the discovery section of the portal that you checked out in the previous part of this webinar. So providing that kind of information. And then we added some additional activities, these are supposed to be mandatory for the mentees, and also with the idea that maybe the pair, for many different reasons, might not have the 6 meetings. So maybe the pair cannot completely exploit the potential of the mentoring relationship. So if this would be the case, at least the mentees can have these trainings. And then we had these other additional activities. So we try to be quite respectful with the time of the mentors, because of course they're doing this altruistically, completely. I didn't say it, but it's one of the key features also of the program. This is an altruistic collaboration. And but we offer them the possibility of having networking. So in the middle of the program, at least in the middle of the 6 months, open the door for an online meeting to bring all mentors who might be interested and want to come in, maybe to share something which worked really well in their pair, or maybe something which they do not see a way of tackling. Sorry. And for example, this idea of the career of the how to face personal interviews is actually a real example. So in the first networking event that we set up of mentors, we had a number of mentors who came to us and told us, look, I think my experience is going well with my mentee. I think I'm providing quite a lot of information which is useful for him or her for a possible career transition. But for example, I just keep on getting questions about what should I do when I go to an interview, how to best approach someone if I'm a candidate for a position or something. And these people didn't, I mean, they only had the experience they had lived. They were not professional human resources managers or anything. But due to this conversation in the meeting, one of these directors of the human resources department said, okay, I'm going to set up I offer myself to provide a webinar to all the mentees in the program. And she provided a webinar, which was not planned initially, but it turned out to be one of these, I mean, the highest rated capacity building activity of that edition. And then also connected to networking, we try to have like the kickoff, a final event. That's a little bit the structure that we follow in the editions. Next slide, please. I'll just mention this very briefly because, of course, in case it hasn't been clear, this is mainly an online mentoring program. So from our side, we never disconnect as managers of the mentoring program. We never disconnect from the program, so we're always there, willing to help if it's possible. So we always we try to send at least one email once per month or something, informing about interesting things. But in order to track the activity, we have this post-meeting forms, which is simply let's say a practical information that we ask the mentees after. Once you finish your meeting, please go to this form and just tell us, meeting 1 takes place this day. I'm planning meeting 2 for this next day. And if they have any kind of suggestions from the practical side, because obviously as in any mentoring relationship, nobody outside of the mentoring pair should know anything about what is being talked about in the mentoring, because confidentiality is a must in any mentoring relationship. So next slide, please. As Svetlana mentioned, we have a network of EURAXESS centers. So the way that we reach out looking for mentors and mentees is obviously through collaborations with our own national network or with our network members. Actually, quite a number of EURAXESS people. I mean, a lot of the EURAXESS people who are maybe working in the EU project office or in the human resources department of an institution, they have a research background, but are currently working in positions which are not academic research. Thus, they are eligible mentors. So we have quite a number of mentors who are our colleagues also. And then we make an extensive use of social media. Next slide. Just to provide some figures, these are the numbers of the first edition. But the thing is, curiously enough, and for reasons beyond my understanding, in all 3 editions, we've had very similar numbers. Around 100, 120 mentor expressions of interest, around 250, 270 applications to become mentees. As I said, there tends to be a slight majority of women, especially in the side of the mentees. And just so you see there, as I said, this is formally the information of the first edition, but it has remained pretty similar. Major interest is in research, development, and innovation activities in industry. So research in the private sector in the strict sense. But then there's a lot of people who are interested in science communication, a lot of people who are interested in specific industry sectors, such as pharma. This is quite general in our application. And then interest in project management, international relationship, consulting, entrepreneurship also. So this is a little bit on the side of the mentees. Next slide. And what about their motivations? Because we asked them about their motivations in the registration in order to understand which works better in the mentoring. Well, as you can see there, most of the people or most of the mentees, these are real testimonials, but it's a summary of the typical replies that we get. People want to know professionals. They just want to know other people outside of their academic research environment or their academic research team. People want to think about their skills and how can they use them in other sectors, or people simply are uncertain of what's out there. And this doesn't mean that they want to leave academia. They simply acknowledge that they do not know what are the alternatives. And that's what we're trying to tackle. Next slide, please. And in the case of the mentors, this is a little bit of the profile that you see there. We have a majority of the people who are 100% private sector, but as I said, we do have also people which work in academia, but again, not in research academic positions. So it can be project management, it can be maybe in technical positions supporting research or research support services, anything that you name it. But we also got public administration. I mean, there are many things that have to do with science advice, science diplomacy, which are relevant, that's beyond academic options. And then of course, third sectors, NGOs, and things like that. Next slide. And when it comes to their motivations, or why a mentor would decide to devote these 6 months to having a relationship with an early stage researcher, we basically see people who had an academic career, and maybe they were lucky enough to have a mentor at that time, which helped them, and they decided to, let's say, pay back. But also because they were in that position and never got a mentor, so they are aware how much a mentor could have helped them. So now that they are on the other side, they want to provide this kind of support. And then there are a lot of people who are actually interested in learning about the researchers, because I should also emphasize that, of course, the primary aim of this mentoring program is supporting the mentees in this eventual transition. But we're also hoping that this exchange of information and this connection through people, we will be able also to, let's say, put in value what researchers can do and what their skills can be useful for in other professional positions beyond academic research. Next slide, please. Some figures of satisfaction. This is from the first edition. You can see that the early stage, we had very high levels of satisfaction and a very high level of engagement. In the first edition, all the mentees participated until the very end, and all of them provide us feedback with satisfaction rates around 80%. And one thing that I like to mention, and it's the willingness to actually stay in contact with their mentors, not as a mentoring relationship anymore, but just as part of their professional network. And in the case of the mentors, next slide, the percentages, curiously enough, are even higher. So actually mentors enjoy this experience very much. And again, it confirms the fact that they are willing to stay in contact with these early stage researchers as part of their professional network. Next slide, please. Then in the first edition, again, with this idea that I mentioned at the beginning about trying to foster more institutions to do this, I mean, we think that we came up with a model, which is clearly, I mean, I'm sure it's improvable. We can do other things and we can do other things differently, which might work better. But nevertheless, it's a success. I mean, it's a success based on the satisfaction. So we have used this also as an excuse to sell this concept of mentoring to academic institutions in order to tackle them. Next slide. And actually, in the case of Spain, because as I said, we have been able to devote more resources in the first edition, but we also got the push from our own institution to move this forward. We have managed to actually get other institutions. So you got two examples there from last year, which are two universities, Universidad Carlos III de Madrid and University Complutense from Madrid also, which are two large universities in the region of Madrid. But even the Spanish Research Council, CSIC, which is the largest research performing organization in Spain with over 200 centers and basically covering all disciplines, well, they have set up a mentoring program for their PhD candidates based on the model of Rebecca and using some of the resources, of course, with their own tweaks and turns, but based on our experience. And as I said, we also use that experience for our own future editions. Next slide. And in the case of the second edition, I like to highlight two things. One of them I already mentioned, which is the fact that we managed to use this as a platform to collaborate with diaspora associations. So as a way of further enforcing the contact with researchers who are outside of Spanish researchers who are currently working outside of Spain. But also there was a bit of a game changer when it came to our relationship, especially with industry. And it's obviously the people that participate here as mentors participate as persons, as individuals. But then in the second edition, as there was a bit of a buzz around this Rebecca approach and this Rebecca concept, many of the mentors repeated participating, and there was a slight change of relationship here. And it was that, for example, where we had, I don't know, a researcher X working in budget as an individual in the first edition, because of the good experience, this person went back to Badger, and actually Badger then got engaged in the program. So in this second edition, we didn't go to this person to try to convince him or her to be part of our mentoring, but it was Badger who said, okay, I'll distribute the call and try to get the workers, the people from my R&D department to participate in this. So suddenly, something which we had failed to do, at least from the side of EURAXESS Spain, I can assure you that we have failed to have this engagement with industry. Suddenly the mentoring program has allowed us to change it. So we got companies who are actually coming to us telling us, hey, when it's the next edition of Rebecca, we're looking forward to engaging and distributing the call within our staff in order to try to get as many mentors as possible from our organization and your mentoring program. And that's been a huge change for us. Next slide. And another thing that we learned, and this is related to the direct results, is a better way to measure the impact of the program. I specifically showed you at the results of 2019 saying that those were satisfaction measures. So like any webinar or anything, we basically asked at the end how happy you are with the experience. But of course, that's not really a measure of impact. So in the second edition, we decided to do a number of questions related to topics that we have been addressing today at the beginning of the program before the mentoring relationship start, and ask them the same thing and compare it at the end of the mentoring program. And I will show you three clear examples. The first one there in the left, you can see I know what professional options I have outside of academia. And I'll tell you to just focus on the pink and purple lines, which are I agree and strongly agree. As you can see, only 14% and 1% of the mentees at the beginning of the program considered that they knew what options they had outside of academia. And these percentages goes all the way to almost 25 and 46% after Rebecca. Similar thing you can see under the question, I'm clear about how my research experience can be an asset beyond academia. Again, a small percentage of the mentees had made this reflection of what all those things that they were learning through their academic research activity, how could they be used in another sector? And through a conversation with a professional from another place, again, we go all the way almost to 80% being agreeing or strongly agreeing at the end of the program. Next slide. And last but not least, we asked them about how clear they were about the weaknesses that they should address in order to make this transition. So again, it's about the skills, how aware you are about the skills that you currently have. And if you have to make an eventual transition to somewhere you're interested, do you know what you need to do? Again, a huge majority of them had no idea at the beginning of the mentoring program, and after the relationship with their mentors, the meetings, the trainings, and so on, huge increase on the awareness. And one last thing that I want to show you, and it's that I don't have that fancy figure, but you have the numbers below in the slide. And it's about the willingness to actually leave academia. We asked them also at the beginning of the program and at the end of the program, what is your intention of leaving academia? Do you want to leave academia? And in this case, the percentages hardly change, which is also a success for us. Because as I said, we're not looking for pushing anybody outside of academia. What we want is researchers with more resources to better manage their career. So next slide. And as I said, unfortunately, the participation in the mentoring program itself is not possible right now because the last edition, as I told you, call for mentors in November, call for mentees approximately in December. Launching of the mentoring program after the matching process took place last week. And as I said, one big difference. We have tried to make connections between pairs, I mean mentors and mentees in different European countries. I have to admit, we set up 100 pairs, and it's around 60% of the participants, both from the side of the mentors and the mentees, are Spanish or are located in Spain. And of course, this is not a surprise because as you've seen, I mean, over 3 years, we have repeated the editions. So we already got some kind of branding, if you wish. But still, we have 40% of the participants from the side of the mentors and mentees, thanks to the collaboration of other EURAXESS colleagues who are participating. And we're going to, in the matches, we followed the same thing. So it really didn't matter at the end from where they were located. We just matched them based on their interest and their professional expertise. And we will see how that works now with the European dimension. But then, as I mentioned, there will be 2 other activities. Next slide, please. One of them is a virtual matchmaking event, because this is a feedback that we got from the mentoring period since the very beginning. So the mentoring relationship is nice, but you know what would be even nicer if I could actually have contact with non-academic employers. So we're going to try to do that in EURAXESS Hubs, and we'll see how it works. So between May and June 2022, there will be what we call these at least 2 virtual matchmaking events where we want to put together researchers, think about the profile of the mentees, but it's not only going to be the mentees of Rebecca, it will be open to more people. This is at least the part where you could potentially participate. And from the side of the businesses, we're going to try to have some companies there. So research to business encounters. At least to have a bit of let's say a bit of an engagement, of networking, and maybe even opportunities to actually showcase from the side of the business organizations, showcasing maybe job opportunities, and from the side of the researchers, showcasing their own research. We're going to put them, they're going to be free of charge. Next slide, please.
Just a second to make it clear, all of our participants in mentoring program, EURAXESS mentoring program, Shape the Future of a Researcher, will be able to apply for participation in these events, right?
Exactly. And you use the right word, apply, because we are still, I mean, this part of the activity is led by our Slovakian colleagues who are not here, so I'm presenting on their behalf. But they are working really hard right now in trying to set up the scheme. And actually, I'm going to ask you, the audience, again about this, because it will help us organize. So at some point in the coming months, as I said, the aim is having it between May and June, 2 events. So in the coming months, in March and April, there will be a call. And you will basically, any researcher should be able to apply, and the same from the side of the organizations.
No matter where they are based, I mean in the world.
Initially, yes, but again, please note that I'm not leading the organization of these events. So next slide, just to have it's a bit more on the same thing about what researchers can get out of this. So we're hoping to have the ideas that we have so far without further definition, that we would like to have some panel discussions, maybe around certain type of companies or maybe about certain sectors. We want to showcase somehow company profiles. We're thinking about the possibility of having the presentation of companies. We're also thinking about how we could try to facilitate this showcasing of research outputs from the researchers themselves, and maybe even having one-to-one contacts or maybe one-to-many contacts. But as I said, this is work in progress. And for that, I have a Mentimeter for you. So if you want to stop sharing, Svetlana.
Stopped.
Okay. And if you, I'm going to share here the screen, but it's already available. If you would be so kind to please go into the Mentimeter now, and you will see there are a number of things which we are considering to implement. Our Slovakian colleagues are considering to implement in these matchmaking events. But in order to have a better knowledge, I mean, it would be really valuable for you to share with us which, from your point of view, would be interesting. This is a ranking which you can put how interesting, how appealing it would be to you. If it had a thematic network, is one of the options. Think about focus, again, my typical example, a matchmaking event on biotechnology or on your discipline. I mean, would you be interested in that? Or maybe a geographical approach, maybe Mediterranean countries or Western or Eastern European countries. I don't know, maybe somebody thinks that that approach might be more significant. What about one-to-one interviews? Would you be interested in participating in an event such as this one if there were be one-to-one interviews, meaning one representative from business organization devoting to you a couple of minutes to a researcher? Or would you feel, or you would rather prefer if it would be one company representative presenting something to a limited amount of people and engaging in a conversation? Obviously, because time is an issue, maybe you prefer company presentations, because that way you will have it kind of like a Congress setup, and you would have, instead of the other way around, even if you make the interviews very short, and even if you make one too many, maybe you can have, I don't know, 5 organizations participating. If we go for company presentations, maybe we can have 20. Obviously, there's not going to be this level, that high level of interaction, but then you're going to have more information. So again, company presentations interested. And last thing that we are considering, a way of how to doing it, would you see yourself participating in a virtual event such as this one and going there and sharing with the business organization what you are doing as a researcher, if that would make any sense or would be appealing in any way to you? So I grant you 1 minute, because I would be quite, I mean, we are quite interested in collecting this kind of information in order to try to set up this, the most successful matchmaking event possible, because that's completely new for us. I mean, it's actually quite, as EURAXESS members, it's quite an ambitious activity. We are aware, but we are hoping to make the most of it.
Javi, the last option, platform to share their own research, this is pretty much like pitching or something like this?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, it could be a pitching session, or maybe, you know, that online, I mean, due to the pandemic, the tools for implementing virtual activities have become quite more complex and more generalized. So maybe you can set up some kind of how do you say this, of a square marketplace where researchers could somehow showcase some parts of what are the research topics or something like that. So do not think only about pitching. It could be something else.
Mm-hmm. This is very important actually to think on this, because okay, the company's presentation are fine, but at the end it is important the companies to see who is there. And for me, the platform to share own research would be really very important.
Yeah. Okay, so
yeah, I see they
thematic
rating.
Network. Okay, so I'm stopping here. I will be right back in Mentimeter in a minute, but I stopped sharing. I ask you, Svetlana, to please share one more slide. I promise, one more slide from my side, because I'm aware that I get quite enthusiastic when I start talking about Rebecca.
And you want the next?
Yes, please.
Right. Okay.
Well, the next one is a Mentimeter, next one. And the last thing that is somehow new, it's not completely new, because we have attempted, we realized that networking was an important asset for the participants of the mentoring program. But in this case, we're going to try to make it a bit more structured, let's say, and actually use it, especially because we're going to this European dimension, to try to do a bit of community building. Because we are aware, because of the numbers and many reasons that we said, that there is an interest on the side of researchers on this, on learning about intersectoral research career opportunities. So we thought, okay, let's try to use the push. You know, we're going to have people participating in the mentoring program. We're going to have people participating in the matchmaking event. So let's try to bring them together and do a bit of community building. So we have thought about using a LinkedIn. Currently, we have a showcase page connected to the EURAXESS LinkedIn page, where we're posting some information since the project began. And here, I'm going to, you can stop sharing now. And somebody is asking about the link. I'm going to share it with you immediately in the chat, just in case you want to check it out. Because I'm going to ask you once more. Well, I'm not going to do two things at the same time because it's impossible for me. So first,
this is very, very important opportunity to participate in this Researchers Beyond Academia LinkedIn group, because everyone can present themselves in there. Also, companies can join, and you can be visible not only by EURAXESS profile, creating a EURAXESS account, but also in the LinkedIn group of EURAXESS Beyond Academia.
Yeah. So can you provide me the rights to share for a minute so I can go back to the Mentimeter, because we're also learning a little bit by doing there. So I'm going to take the advantage that I have your more than 20 people here to please ask you once again. I asked you about the matchmaking events and your opinion which could work. And in this case, in the showcase page, especially, we are publishing information which we think it's useful for this community building. So I post there kinds of topics that we have thought for posting, or are already, there are a few posts there by our Irish colleague. And I'm asking which of these contents would be interesting for you in order to be connected to this LinkedIn page. What kind of stuff you would like to see there in order to keep your interest in being in this LinkedIn.
But so, you have currently more than 2,000 people in this group.
Yes, because we have taken advantage. As I said, we had the support from our European Commission coordinators of the initiative, who are running a rather successful LinkedIn group in general of EURAXESS, with a lot of people connected there. So what we did is that we created a showcase page connected to the main EURAXESS LinkedIn. So by default, many of the people in EURAXESS were already there. They sort of floated into this showcase page.
Mm-hmm. And actually, you provide opportunity in there to everyone to post something.
Yes, you have the possibility of posting, but there is one functionality that we are seeing the way of doing it, and is that the capacity of networking there, basically seeing who are the people in the group and reaching out to that people, doesn't work in the showcase page. So we're contemplating the possibility of reinforcing it with an ad hoc group, which would allow for that networking. So that's why I take the opportunity that Svetlana provided me with this webinar to actually ask a little bit and plan our next steps in the LinkedIn. And while maybe getting a few more votes, I think that is definitely all from my side. So one last check. So what networking possibilities? That basically replies to a question, a discussion I was having this morning. Capacity building opportunities, followed by information on intersectoral events. Okay, people, wonderful. Thank you so much for this input.
I will start sharing again the presentation. And would you now put the other Mentimeter? Javi? Your mic is muted. Your mic is muted.
Yes. Sorry. As I'm using my laptop, I couldn't. I was finishing on sharing before I could open the microphone. I'm sorry.
Okay. So you have now another question that is related to your career stage. Is it your career stage at the moment suitable to be a mentor or a mentee? And we have 2 mentees. One mentor and nobody that still considers. Okay. And I need a bit more from you to see what is our audience, mentees or mentors. Seems equally for now, but only 4 out of 24. Okay, more mentees appear. Okay, if we consider that the rest are pretty much unsure, what is their career stage, whether they are able to mentor or to be a mentee, we can say that most of us here are pretty much at the level of a mentee. Javi, please, next question. Have you ever participated in a mentoring program before today? This is a simple question. Yes or no? It seems that if you participate currently in any of these 2 programs, actually, this is a pretty new experience for you. Okay, the next question. Do you participate in any of the presented programs? This most probably will be the turning point for you, and you'll consider joining those programs, at least the integration program that is okay. Thank you very much, Manish, for joining us today. Okay, the next question. Do you have a mentor or a mentee at the moment? Again, very simple question to answer. Okay, I see several people that don't have a mentor or are not a mentee at the moment. This might be, next slides will help you to consider that. And the next question. Has your experience in mentoring a positive impact on your career, at least up to now? Because many of you didn't have an experience before. But yes, I see that it has for 2 of you, for 3 of you, for 4. Maybe you didn't have enough experience to consider that. Okay. I don't think you're very active at the moment. You don't want to share any more your opinion. We asked you too many questions with Javi. I see him laughing. Okay, the next question. Do you consider mentoring useful for your career? Yes, not sure yet, of course. This is an answer for one that is yeah, of course, I understand. Jeannie answers that she didn't have a mentor yet, but from what you learned today, maybe you are able to answer what you think could be possible for you to have benefit from it or not at all. Okay, you become more active. I see more answers. Thank you, Jeannie. And now the next question, I think it was the last question, or do you plan to have an academic career? You have to think on this question, I think. Or you would like to move to public or industrial research, or you haven't decided yet? Well, we know that you want to stay in academia. Everyone wants, and the whole system is arranged to teach you and to prepare you for academic career, but this is not the case for everyone. So at least you have to consider opportunities and see the options that you have. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you very much for this. And I think this was the last question, right? So you stop sharing now. And now we continue with my very short slides. How to get best out of the EURAXESS mentoring program, specifically shape the future of a researcher coming to Europe. And I think that the answer is simple. I don't know whether you think different from me, but you can express your opinion in the chat. I think you have to be active. Just with a few words about the program. Currently, we have 760 researchers registered from different parts of the world, pretty much equal, a bit more female, and almost 160 mentors, pretty much equally spread between male and female. Working couples and those that already finished their work are 157. These are just few numbers for you. Google Analytics says that the number of visits increase every month. Currently, they are 755, 25, the highest number of visits per country. Those that are in dark color are actually most active countries in visiting our mentoring webpage. This is it, the mentoring webpage, and you please make sure you register if you would like to take part of it. If the whole presentation today and the whole seminar showed you that you can benefit from participation in the mentoring program. What happens after the registration? Most of the mentors wait, and this is reasonable to a certain extent, because they are mentors and actually the mentee has to be the active site and the mentee has to ask a mentorship. But there are mentors that manage within the first year to have 5 and even 7 mentees for this 1 year period, which means that they had more than one mentee at a time. This shows very high dedication, but there are many that had none. And this is due to the fact that no one requested their mentorship, or they didn't request any mentorship from the mentees, which is more peculiar, much more peculiar and strange, that most of the mentees also wait. I cannot understand why, but this is not reasonable. If you want to have a mentor, you have to do a step. You have to prepare for it. There are mentees that had, you understand, with 760 people in the program and 160 mentors, it is not possible for everyone to have a mentor. Yes, it's true, but one of the, not one, but several mentors had 7 mentees, which means that they are open. They are waiting for you to contact them and to start your mentorship. And there are mentees that make quite a good benefit from the program that have more than 3 mentors. And there are other that registered at the beginning and still have no mentee, no mentor. After the registration, what happens? What actually should happen? The mentee has to explore the functionalities, to look at the search engine, to use the safe search option, and to request a mentorship, at least 2 at a time, because not all of the mentees are, the mentors are available at the moment and can answer positively. If more than one answer positively, I will follow up with the instruction. But in any case, you have to ask mentorship at least from 2. Then you have to prepare for the first meeting. And this is right after your registration. What does mean to prepare? You have to have a short CV. You have to be ready to talk about your research interests, motivation, difficulties, problems that you have, in order to get support from your mentor. And in order to prepare for this, you need to think on, to sit down and to write down some of your questions, some of your difficulties, etc. You have to draft your mentoring plan and to send it in advance to your mentor. Even before the requested mentorship is answered, you have to have this draft ready, because once you get this approval from the mentor to take you on board, you have to send him immediately your proposal for a mentoring plan. Also, you have to list your questions to the mentor in order not to forget anything important at the first meeting. We propose 6 topics, and actually we give you an option to choose at least 3 and add topics that are of your interest and that you consider that the mentor would help you with this. So think on possibly adding several topics by your interest. Drafting your mentoring plan, how it happens. For instance, for topic publication and presentations, you can list, I give you here several options for questions, but you can, of course, prepare more. And if you want to be prepared, you have to be ready with such questions for each of the topics that you would like to include in your draft mentoring plan. What happens then? Your mentorship is approved and your mentor is ready to meet you. You have to be prepared to present yourself and your interests. You better send your CV in advance, and at the meeting, you present very shortly and present your interests, especially in the area that you would like to talk with the mentor. Make sure you ask all of your questions in order to get the mentor opinion and advice on that, even at the first meeting. Discuss the proposal mentoring plan and agree with your mentor on possible adjustments to the plan if needed. Make sure that your mentor is able to provide you with everything that you wanted, and if he or she is not able to provide you, make sure you understand well what she or he is able to provide and how you can get benefit from it. Make clear what you have to prepare for the next meeting. Agree on the date and the time for the next meeting, and by this, you will be much more prepared next time. I planned here to have a short exercise on preparation of draft mentoring plan. These are the 6 predefined topics, and you can choose, but please make sure at least 3 of them, and then prepare at least 1 question to each of these topics. For this exercise, I would rather give you, okay, not full 10 minutes because the time is advancing and we didn't have a break, but at least 5 minutes to think. If you need more time, just let me know in the chat. I see your comments in the chat. Focus now on preparation of a drafting of a mentoring plan. This is just an exercise. It's not actual mentoring plan, but make sure you think on that. Okay, but Sandra, you have to have 6 topics in one mentoring plan. So you choose these 3. However, you need to add, I see you added networking, but you need in total 6 topics. So think on preparing some more plus a question to each of the topics. I know publications and presentations are the most liked topic by everyone, and almost everyone puts this in their mentoring plan once they have a mentor. but think on other possible topics that are of high interest for you. Okay. Well-being is a perfect topic because all of the researchers, especially those that are at early stage of their career, experience a huge stress at the beginning of the PhD studies. And this is always an important point. How you can lower the levels of the stress, what you can do to improve your well-being at the moment, because the numbers of mental problems in research community rise every year. And there is a Remo cost action. You know, some of you participated in this webinar. Okay, good. If someone of you is ready, you can unmute your microphone and share with us, even your camera if you'd like, and share with us what are your thoughts on the 6 possible topics, and show us the most important question that you managed to prepare. Not sure, but tell us. Who would dare to share their question and their topics? Okay, I see the topics more or less, but at least one question that you would like to ask your mentor related to any of the topics. If you would not like to talk or to open your camera. Okay, I see Noelia wrote it in the chat. It's also an option to write in the chat your question. But these are pretty much topics, Noelia. What about the question? What would you ask your mentor? Imagine I'm your mentor. What would you ask me about smart materials, for instance? Good question. What is the career options for history outside academia? Great. This means we made you think on possibilities outside academia. This is very good. Thank you, Shripad.
Svetlana, I have a question.
Please.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Yes, this is related to career counseling. So my question, if you were my mentor or if somebody else was my mentor, would be, what is the best way to make an interdisciplinary career move from pure psychology to neuroscience?
Okay, thank you. This is an important question. And you make sure you ask your mentor about that? Or you already, because I know you have a mentor. Did you ask it?
No.
Not yet? Make sure you ask next time.
Yes. For maybe my second mentorship program, I think this will definitely be a question I'll ask.
Okay, thank you very much, Cressida.
Thank you.
I have another question in the chat. Things related to mobility and adaptation to life in different countries. If you don't have this, didn't have this opportunity before to move outside your country, this is very important question, but also related to it is a question about the sorry, about the different research systems. You have to ask your mentor about how the research system works in his country, because the research systems in Europe are pretty much similar, but not equally arranged. And in your countries, it might be totally different. Even in Europe, there are differences, but with third countries, we definitely have differences in the research systems. Okay, we finish with the exercises for today, and my next slide is about the mentors. If there are any mentors, I suppose there are, because some of you answered that you are at the career stage for becoming a mentor. Then after the registration, you do pretty much similar steps as the mentees do. So you have to explore the functionalities, and if you would like to start as soon as possible your mentorship, you have to use the searching engine and save search option. Then request the mentorship from at least 2 mentees at a time in order to see whether they are all available. They might have no mentor at the moment, but they might be not available at the moment. It depends on their schedules and their plans, etc. Then you have to prepare for the first meeting. What means to prepare for a mentor? Again, you have to have short CV. Otherwise, you cannot explain to your mentee what exactly is your experience. Be ready to talk about your research interests, your experience, and what exactly you can provide to your mentee. What are your abilities to support the young researcher? Whether you have some information important for his or her career to share, some sources of information and material, some conferences, some opportunities for publishing, or even I know definitely that in the mentoring program, we do have such a case for joint publications between the mentor and the mentee, prepared within the mentoring program. Mark which of the predefined topics and subtopics you are able to cover and which new topics you would suggest to the mentee that you think that might be useful for them, because they might not know what could be useful for them at the point of starting of the mentorship. Prepare some arguments why they are important, so important for this specific researcher. List your questions to the mentee in order not to forget anything important. Then at the first meeting, you again, like the mentee, present yourself shortly, present your interests and abilities to support, ask all questions that you are interested to learn about the mentee and about his or her interests, discuss with the mentee their proposal for mentoring plan, and make sure that you agree on the suggestions you can make at this point and agree on adjustments of the mentoring plan if needed, any adjustment. Make clear that you can, what you can and what you cannot do for him, because there might be some points of his interest that you cannot provide. This is have to be very clear already at the first meeting. Make clear to the mentee what he or she has to prepare for the next meeting. Because if don't give them any task to do for the next meeting, they would just appear and ask you questions. Agree on the date and the time, of course, this is very important, but we just need to remind you about that. And to both groups, mentors and mentees, consider and discuss during not only the first meeting, but during all of the meetings, intercultural differences between your and her on his culture. Discuss research system differences in your countries or in the countries that you have experience in. Organizational culture differences. These are the culture of your university or your research center. Discuss personality specifics. Discuss your psychological and emotional aspects of your communication. These are very, very important points, and you never please forget about this. And especially follow the ethical principles of the mentoring program. Everything has to be confidential between you and your mentee or your mentor, and anything that go public has to have a written agreement before that. And last but not least, mentoring builds global research community. It is successful when both sides are active, not only one of the sides. It's always a win-win outcome because everyone gets something positive, can get something positive if they are active in this relationship. And mentoring helps researchers to advance faster in their career. It opens the doors of the networking and cooperation, and definitely make career choices better. So if we make this in pictures, we start with the first meeting. You never had a mentor or a mentee. We start with the first meeting. We go through assistance. We interconnect through our activities during the mentoring program. We achieve the career growth by that. And we finally become even friends. So thank you very much. I see here something in the chat. Let me answer before before I stop for today. This is just Shripad, this is a question about how do you shift research with digital humanities? Okay. Okay. So there are no questions related to what I presented recently. Here is our contacts, our LinkedIn groups. So don't hesitate to contact us or to join any of these LinkedIn groups and to stay in touch with us. Thank you very much for everything today. Thanks very much to Javi for sharing so many and so interesting things about the mentoring program, Rebecca.